I think it can be seen in how much struggle these shorts are having to fulfill what is due every month on the Comex.
Well, and it's funny, and although they didn't speak directly to silver, although I would argue the silver is the exact same thing. In fact, on steroids, the ECB warned that gold is a threat to the global financial system. I'll just read something to you real quick. I'm sure you saw this. Last month, the ECB, the European Central Bank, warned of increasing counterparty risk in gold derivatives for the euro area. In the May edition of the Financial Stability Review, the ECB added that a significant share of these gold derivatives were over the counter and not centrally cleared, leaving actors exposed to counterparty risk. As you said, the LBMA is not an exchange, it's an over the counter um, um, system, I guess you call it. The big point to take on board is an official recognition that the stand for delivery obligations on Comex are behind the crisis, and they continue. Since November, warehouse stock has shown 26,470,000 ounces have stood for delivery. Eurozone banks have swapped gold for paper, and the gold is disappearing in deliveries. Behind the ECB's public concern is a far deeper one. It is as close as we can get to official warning that the gold paper game is coming to a very nasty end, likely to drive gold measured in paper currencies far, far higher. And incidentally, the same problem exists in silver, but without the central bank participation, more of a commercial bank, which means it's an existential threat to some of these banks if the shit hits the fan. That's in essence what you are saying, correct?
It is, and that gold, it's interesting because people don't. I mean, ever since the GATA days when I was like, hey, there might be a hell of a lot more gold than what we've been told. And there's like, Bix, what are you talking about? That's, blasphemy. And they kicked me out of GATA, kind of. Not Chris and not Bill, but, the rest of the guys are like, yo, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. So then we find out, yeah, there's a hell of a lot more gold. People still don't understand that there's one of the problems with gold, I think, is that we don't know how much there is. You can believe there's 220,000, 230,000 tons that's ever been mined. And you can believe that till you're blue in the face. Jim Sinclair was saying, hey, the Chinese are taking 2,000 tons every year for the past 50 years. I mean,
He
that
was right.
tells you right now there's something wrong with the gold market. And on the flip side, gold, absolutely, the banks have a lot of gold. They want that price to go up, so they're allowing it to go up. I mean, and they set the price on the Comex and the LBMA with the futures and options. They don't have a lot of silver. That's why they're not allowing it to go up. And now they're stuck with this massive silver short that I think the only way to get rid of that silver short in a kind of way that doesn't destroy everything, which I don't quite think there is a way to do that, is to shut down the Comex and the LBMA. To do that, and it would be obviously some kind of crisis. Maybe we go to war and say, oh, we're just going to pause trading for a little bit, and then they never open up again. But these are the exchanges that got the banksters and the global system in what, $3 quadrillion worth of derivative trouble. I mean, everybody and derivatives don't do well in volatile markets, as we saw in 2008. I think we have many banks blowing up behind the scenes right now, and it just has yet to come to the surface. The farther we go through this year, as war and other things, which we'll talk about offline, the war and the riots and how much of this is planned and has been planned for a very long time, as the end game. And I do think it has to do with gold and silver and the control of all markets via computers and derivatives. But yeah, that's just the
Well, and that's why I think we're seeing a shift. Now you have Singapore getting into the game and opening up a market, a gold market. They want pricing authority to shift towards Asia. And I think that's what is happening, whether it be with the Shanghai Metals Exchange, now an exchange that's being developed in Singapore, the BRICS exchange. There's no question that I think they've realized for a very long time that the pricing power, the West monopoly on metals pricing and settlement is something that they realize is a scam. And I think that buyers in Asia aren't just looking for better pricing; they're seeking autonomy. They're seeking the ability to set the prices. This is a big deal that I think people are missing. And even when the BRICS grain exchange was developed last year, the guy that is behind it said, we in the global South produce and consume more grain than the West does, but we can't control the price. It's done on Comex. But with the development of this grain exchange, that will change. I think you could say the same thing here about the move eastward. And that's one of the scary things about the recklessness of the Western policies that are allowing the exchanges to be drained and flowing eastward to countries like India, countries like China, countries like Saudi Arabia and Russia, and all of the countries that understand what silver represents, standing for delivery. And maybe by the grace of God, someone in the Trump administration said, look, we've got to do the same thing here. We're in big trouble. Hence all of the deliveries we're seeing. I don't know, Bix, I know you had me on your show, but I'll ask you, I mean, when do we see the price suppression end? What does it take for this to be overwhelmed, for these banks to realize that this isn't just stupid, it's an existential threat to their survival? Are we getting there? Are we almost there?
It's hard to believe that we're getting there with Bissett in as Treasury Secretary. He is George Soros's. I mean, he was George Soros's right hand man for decades, and the Trump administration. You know, whether or not you love him or hate him, they are the biggest riggers of all the riggers. So, I mean, I love Trump in so many ways, but the most important way to get back to freedom is free markets. And we don't have them. We are far from them in every single category. And the world knows it. And they're handing us our lunch by taking physical delivery of metals, opening up their own exchanges. They know we're going down.
Yes,
They know
that's
our,
exactly it.
yeah. So we
I
are,
think that should be the title of this podcast. That these countries are handing us our lunch, and they are. And I've been screaming that, and you have too. That's the part I hope people can understand, that it's not always price that is the determining factor. Do you see us waking up one morning? In other words, instead of it being a slow drip like we've seen it now move up, 32, 33, et cetera, 34. Or do we wake up one morning and it's 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 or whatever that number is? Do you see that happening?
I see neither. What I see is wake up one morning and there is no price. And we see that people understand that the United States of America, along with every other country, has been printing quadrillions of dollars behind the scenes and not telling people. I mean, Elon just found these 14 computers, and they've been printing money from nothing. And they didn't announce. I think Elon is starting to hint at, oh, by the way, this isn't a couple $100 billion to the Democrats. This is trillions of dollars, which would destroy the monetary system. And it's not just the United States; it's Russia, it's China, it's every country on the planet is telling you how much they print, but in actuality, it's unlimited. It's infinity money. That's what Ruta wrote in the sand in the original Road to Ruta comic books. It's if as long as people believe the system, we're in a faith system, and there's not much faith in any government anymore to do what they're supposed to do. And now they're going to resort to blowing each other up and taking us along with them, because that's what they do when the banks get in trouble. And we are seeing that every which way. And if Trump gets dragged into this, it's an in game. I do think we're just going to literally we'll have a default of someone like J.P. Morgan or Citibank or Bank of America. A too big to fail bank goes, a derivative problem destroys everything. It's Buffett's weapon of mass financial destruction. We'll wake up one morning and not be able to function monetarily, and there'll be no stock market price that won't be open. And what did they say in 2008? We were a couple hours away from that scenario.
Yeah.
Senator Ken
We
Dorsey.
were staring into the abyss, I think they said.
Yeah. And they said it would be 2 or 3 hours and Europe would have failed, and then the next day the United States would have failed, that type of thing. And what does that mean? It means it's out there, and it's just gotten worse. The derivative bubble went from 2 quadrillion in 2008 to 3 quadrillion is the latest estimate, and that's a number you just can't recover from. And that's not even right either, because they're creating things out of thin air. The 14 computers that Elon found probably did what, 5 trillion each. And where did that money go? It went to whoever's running that printing press. Whatever deep state entity is running the game at the moment. So yeah, I think it's not going to be a slow trickle. I think people will understand just how much fraud is in the system now on every front. Stock market, bond market, the amount of money printed by every nation, and then the fact that they're going to take us to war to get us out of it. It should scare everybody in the world. And then they're causing homeland strife with this bullshit, stuff that they're creating. The deep state is creating this fight against, no kings. It's just crazy. And I heard one of the tactic was to for the weekend to tell all the restaurants and everything that, oh, ICE is coming to this restaurant, just to get people freaked out. And that's, you get the people out, and it's just mass hysteria, mass delusion. It's like, I don't know how to frame it better than to say they are playing right into the deep state playbook of chaos. And what happens with chaos? You turn to your government. I think we're not going to turn to the government. I don't think people like government anymore. And when we find out, when all the truth bomb comes out about who these people are, I think that's when we say, oh, holy crap, it's
Well,
over.
yeah, and you get the mainstream media's borderline compulsive deception, and this that what I'm going to say here is fact, and it's not conjecture, and it's not inflammatory at all. I just think what I think of the world that you and I grew up in. We're very close to the same age. I'll read you one paragraph, get your take on this. To your point, earlier this week, ABC journalist Jory Rand sought to reframe the escalating violence on the streets of LA, even as his own channel broadcasts images of cars completely engulfed in flames, the thick black smoke billowing into the night air. Nothing there was a noting there that there was a large group of people running wild, Rand said. It could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and acceleration between officers and demonstrators. Now, that's how the media portrays this. Just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn. But if you bring in law enforcement, well, it could turn violent. Again, to your point, you can't make this stuff up, and it's very difficult. And that's why people aren't aware of the things that you and I talk about, the things that are so logical to us and to your listeners, because they're being gaslit by a media that would go as far as saying it's a peaceful protest and just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn. But if you bring in law enforcement, watch out, it's going to get violent. Now, I don't understand that, and I have a hard time even saying it and rationalizing it, but that's the world we find ourselves living in. Let's just hope somehow, some way that we're able to look back at this and say, how did we ever get here? Thank God we found a way out of it. I sometimes I wonder, after watching all the chaos we've seen the last several days.